One thing that's really sinking in is there is no stopping conflict. There is no avoiding pain or getting to a state where you get to stop, prevent unease, stress, anxiety, right? Conflict in relationships. That's the point of life. That's why we're here, to evolve through pain and challenges and conflict within our relationships. That's how we get to grow and evolve. For without stress, there is no opportunity for growth. Just like any aspect of our lifestyle to which we can embark on to improve our well being, exercising your body, strengthening your muscles, your joints, right? Eating better, learning to sleep well. In the beginning phases is always going to be difficult. But as we progress, it becomes more meaningful and joyful and gets easier. And through that, a confidence, an increase in courage, in resilience, in peacefulness, in acceptance continues to increase. And it really is in relationships, relationships in our life, with our partner, with our kids, with our coworkers, with our bosses, right? Our leaders, the people in our society, but especially, yeah, interpersonal relationships. We get a chance to grow through them. And the way I see it, and I always do my best to express it in that way because I see it in my way. And I invite you to be willing over time to see it in your way as you experiment and figure things out for yourself. But the way I see it, it's in relationships that we get to recognize where we still are holding on to resistance, where we still have judgments about ourselves, about our relationship with our life and the world. And it all comes up through the conflicts that inevitably and naturally arise in the various relationships we have in our life with other people, also with nature and with society, right? The changes of life. But truly, it's in our relationships. For example, I know most of us have, well, bosses in one way or another, or in certain transitions. And we're all human, and our bosses are human. And at times, things will come up in that we may experience our bosses trying to guide us or manage us in a way that is triggering, is stressful, is induces judgment and frustration, maybe anger. And we have an opportunity through those experiences to take a look at ourselves, both the boundaries that we have for ourselves and in this particular relationship where there's a higher authority, if you will, or someone dictating the terms of our way of being in our workspace, for example. And we get to learn to not take things personally as one element. We get to learn to express how our boundaries may have been crossed in another way. We get to learn and be willing to relate to them as a human being to another human being, rather than, just maintaining the pattern that, okay, just this is the authority figure. And even though I don't like it, I can't really say anything, or I'm just going to take it. And, but it's the willingness to grow, right? In some situations, you may need to have the patience for them as a human being, knowing that they may have bad days or that's the way they operate in life and it's not personal. And then they may come a moment, a time when you're ready to let them know how you've been impacted as a human being, to let them know their way of um, correcting a mistake does not have to be like that. Maybe it's causes unnecessary stress or is triggering in a way that is not conducive to a mutually cooperative work relationship. And it's that willingness to, well, own our value, to give ourselves that opportunity, right, to communicate as human beings with each other. And then, of course, it may very well not be received as you would hope or expect. I invite you, first of all, and important to remember, be willing to let go of expectations of how you expect the others to respond when you choose to have the courage to speak your truth of perhaps how you've been affected by the way a thing was shared or a mistake was addressed, right? And it may come down to realizing that this person is not willing to adjust, to deal with you in a humane way, perhaps. And so, therefore, you may realize then you need to, well, perhaps have the patience, but also be willing to be open to another course of action. Perhaps being open to changing departments, perhaps being open to, if your authentic expression of wanting to resolve a certain conflict is not met with what would be satisfying for you, then perhaps going to a upper level of management. And if that's not available, perhaps it's the courage to be willing to open up to looking for another job, another position, right? We're all in different situations, but be willing to take a look at your relationship with your mind when it comes in saying that that's not possible or there's nothing better, etc. And be willing to do the work of letting that go, right? This is just one example, for example, of in the workplace, if you have a boss or a manager that's causing you stress. But also, you may well be surprised by what you may be able to change in the dynamic of a relationship by having the maturity to speak up for yourself, even though it may be extremely uncomfortable, perhaps extremely difficult for you to do so. Perhaps it's been rare that you've done so in your life, right? Or you may be someone on the other end and always pushing back and, instigating more conflict and creating more disharmony. Then perhaps it's the learn to deal with it in a more diplomatic way as well. What I want to get at is about recognizing where you are and being willing to come back, well, into balance. First of all, be willing to cultivate that harmony with yourself and recognize it's about finding your middle ground, if you will, right? Of being, too this way, too soft or too hard, and finding that middle ground. And it may be with each person, each different person in your life that changes, that shifts. So it's being willing to navigate and be adaptive with the changing of things. And through that, right, the willingness to navigate, to negotiate, to collaborate with your inner voice, with your relationship with your mind, with the the willingness to develop the communication skills and willingness to speak what you really feel, and to do the work of learning, of growing, right? Increasing your understanding, reading books or taking courses or getting someone to support you who has experienced these kinds of growth, for example. Yeah, because the thing is, yeah, we're all going to have like challenging moments, maybe shitty bosses. Maybe our boss is a beautiful human being, but the way they manage you can feel really shitty sometimes. Maybe they don't know it. I invite you to be willing to, yeah, communicate and see if there's a way to help this person recognize um, how they're impacting you. Perhaps they don't know how they're impacting you, right? And we get to do that work with each other to support each other at learning, because we are here to really support each other in growth, to teach each other. And just because you are, if you will, under someone in a certain position or situation, doesn't mean you don't have anything to teach them. It doesn't mean they're not willing to listen to you. Once again, you may be surprised, but to do it in a way where you're not expecting, right? There is no expectation that if I speak my truth, that this needs to happen, or I expect him or her to, change. It's that willingness to do our best, to learn to speak our truth. And you just don't know how things will shift in a way, and your own growth that you'll experience in yourself, um, that that will arise, that will occur, right? It's really going to be about that, because I've been there. I've been, well, subservient and judging myself as less than, as small, perhaps simply due to the wage I was garnering or my position within any dynamic, whether it's at work in a hierarchical dynamic, or the hierarchical nature of being in a group of friends where there's an unspoken hierarchy of who's the leader, who's more popular, who's prettier, who's more fit, etc. All those pieces. And over time, witnessing yourself and noticing how you are choosing to feel and making yourself feel by your interpretation, or your, uh, yeah, choosing to feel a certain way and judging your value in comparison to what you're perceiving in the other. And just by being willing to progress, that's the beautiful thing. It's the willingness to progress. It's not expecting ourselves to go from, I don't know, minimum wage worker to, I don't know, like six-figure, I don't know, digital nomad. It's But being willing to just progress. You just never know. In the progress itself is comes the greater, well, contentment, peace, joy, right? As you, yeah, experience progressions. Be willing to learn the lives and stories of highly successful people, right? For example, the founder of Nike, and his expressing just how crazy difficult it was in the initial phases of getting it off the ground. But now that it's an overwhelming success over time, this person bemoans the fact that he can't just press a button and go back and do it all over again. Those very tough years, right? And that's so common in people that have been able to make a success of their lives. How they kind of idealize in a way as well, but it really is that, right? The days when they had to eat instant noodles and work 60 hours a week just to get something off of the ground, right? While supporting, I don't know, a newborn and a mortgage, and And those were the days that was most enjoyable. So no matter where you are, I invite you to be willing to start recognizing that you have the capacity to start progressing in any of these areas. But in this, right, it is about, I'm talking about the relational growth and progressions that you get to do in relationships. And we are all in relationships with everyone that we experience, witness. We're in a relationship with the celebrities and the movie stars and the personalities we enjoy entertainment with, right? We each have, whether however conscious or not, have a value assessment of who this person is and who I am, right? And then the people in our lives, right? And there will be people that we may judge as more successful or less successful. Just input the word, more this, less that. I'm more of this, I'm less that. And it's that willingness to progress in our freeing ourselves from needing to compare, to categorize, to judge our value based upon any judgment, to become discerning about that judgment, and then to do the work of progressing in letting go of that and just being true to our own willingness to progress, right? So I invite you to feel into this and feel into your own life and the relationships in your life and where you maybe are experiencing this, right? Feeling stuck, feeling powerless, feeling challenged, maybe feeling better than, maybe feeling aggrandized, or right, feeling other people less than. Oh, it's recognizing where the imbalance is and coming back to harmony, and that willingness to, yeah, cultivate that greater harmony and and authenticity, genuineness with our fellow human beings, which the way I see it is just a reflection of us, right? And to notice how we are projecting onto all the people in our lives and what we are making it mean about ourselves, and whether that navigation, that continuing back and forth, that less than more than, is actually valuable to continue to dance with, and be willing to experiment with letting it go, so you can just simply focus on your own being, your own self, your own progression through a greater state of enjoyment, of play, right? And genuine, authentic expression, because insecurity really is about recognizing we are trying to hide aspects of ourselves that perhaps we repressed, denied, shut off, right, hid away, perhaps from such a young age that we don't even remember the incident that caused us to do that. And I believe we all experience varying degrees of that. So I invite you to recognize all the things that come up in your relationships, the conflict, and if it's triggering, to be willing to notice and for yourself explore, yeah, why that is, and to do the work of supporting yourself at letting go, right, of the stories, of the judgments, and being willing to genuinely support yourself and learn to progress in the growth and the capacity to communicate, to express, and to harmonize, and to integrate and accept these parts of yourself, if you will, the shadow parts, the repressed, denied parts of yourself, so that you can free yourself from needing to judge, needing to be in comparison, and comparing your own value to anyone else's, no matter who they are. And then you will experience, as in my experience I have, a greater sense of just contentment, just peacefulness, just the capacity to be present. And and what a gift you get to give to yourself. So if you are just willing to progress, nothing else matters. The past does not matter if you're willing to progress, right? So self-acceptance and self-support and the willingness to express yourself is so key. And I invite you to recognize you have your own way of doing this, but it is about the willingness to experiment with how that works for you. And in the initial phases, it may be by learning from other people, right? And how they are doing it and trying it out for yourself without dogmatically just believing that this is the right way or I need to do it in this way. And then you start trying. If it doesn't work completely for you, then you think you failed or you're not as good as. That's not it, right? Be willing to keep finding and trying out ways until you can start to develop your own way. And through that, you know, you'll start to really get to appreciate this relationship you get to cultivate with yourself and therefore all of life, because life is simply the greater you. That's the way I see it, right? Yeah. So do not expect conflict to stop. Do not expect to, stop encountering like people that are rude, right? Incidences in your relationships, no matter how close the relationships, that will trigger you. And don't expect your relationships not to change and evolve. You just never know, right? Yeah, don't expect things to stay steady or the same, because that is just not how life works. We are a part of nature, and nature is constantly changing. So I invite you to honor your own nature and to dance and support your change in the way and towards the direction that you would really like to. And I invite you to be willing to do it with a sense of lightheartedness, a sense of taking it non seriously as best as you can. That's what will free you from connecting to your creativity and developing your unique way of creating. Yes, all the best to you. Let me know how this lands for you and what this brought up for you. That's another thing too, right? As you experience things, other people expressing things, and it brings things up for you, the willingness to share them in safe space with people that are willing to receive it will be very impactful, will help you to integrate and accept this arising understanding. And through that, the recognition that, yeah, we really do, we need each other. We're here for each other. We're here for ourselves and for each other. And the more we learn to be for ourselves, the more we will have the capacity to be there for others and attract those that are willing to be there for us and those that need our support as well. And it can it does become a beautiful, beautiful thing, because it is a beautiful thing. And if you don't think so, then I invite you to take a look at your relationship with that thinking, with that story of that life is challenging, it's hard, it's ugly, it's fucked up, right? All those things. Yeah, let me know how this lands for you, and know that, yeah, I am holding a safe space for you, the safest that I can muster, right? So trust yourself to be willing to hold a safe enough space for yourself, because frankly, there is no like true safety, right? There is no controlling the future and preventing any damage or woundedness from happening, but you do get to grow and become more resilient, and to recognize you have a great capacity to overcome and to heal in ways that your fearful, logical mind cannot even fathom. And I invite you to be willing to, yeah, open up and explore how that works for you. All the best, my friends.